All right, in episode 2, we discussed the complexities within the characters Bast and Chronicler, and also the depravity and increasingly dangerous state of the world. We learned that Dan has a natural inclination for rim jobs, while Fitz asks repeatedly if we'll allow it. Pretty strange. We discuss swords and folly, delve further into the Kote versus Kvothe dynamic, and Dan gets confused about the difference between a giller and a gilder. He gets all upset about it. He tries to act like he's not upset. It's really great. And apparently Dan has developed a strength training exercise based on the myth of Sisyphus. Little did he know it was actually developed by an Algerian. Good stuff. Enjoy it!
Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the Utmost Killer Broadcast, King Killer Podcast. Tonight we have with us Granny Panties Danny, and we have Rim Job Timmy, and I'll be Sugar Tits Fitz. So let's get right started, guys. All right.
Well, hold on. I do not.
Okay.
I do not wear granny panties. I wear.
He does.
I wear men's underwear. I'm a man. I
don't know what a rim job is. I've never worked at AutoZone. I don't work on tires. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Tim always giving rim jobs at AutoZone.
Jesus.
And hitting the curb.
I'm very good. I'm a very good parallel parker, by the way. I just had to say that and back myself up. So go ahead.
Is that a pun?
No. I'm a tremendous parallel
Back yourself
parker.
up.
Very, very good. Yeah, it was a bit of a bit of a triple entendre.
I haven't had to do it in a while, but I know that if I had to do it, I would nail it.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
A rim job?
No, parallel parking. I don't like to fuck with rims. I'm not a rim guy.
So tonight, guys, we're going to start with Chapter 2. Get back into this thing. It's titled A Beautiful Day. In this chapter, we meet Chronicler for the first time, who's in the process of being robbed. He packs everything up after he took of some coin and some horses, and anyway, gets back on the road. It's a quick chapter, guys. What'd you think?
Yeah, so he gets robbed by deserters from the army, for one, and we get kind of after like the prologue in episode 1 kind of set the scene, and they set the scene of a society that is something's going wrong with it. Things are getting bad. It seems like there's a civil war going on, and then we get introduced to these deserters who are no longer fighting for the army, and they're just out waylaying and robbing just travelers on the road, and then they're selling, stuff back to the army, like the horse he's gonna sell it back to the army. So it builds in that what we learned in the first 2 chapters, in the prologue in chapter 1, what we learn in those, it builds in that shit's fucked up in this world. It's getting bad. It's dangerous.
So I thought that the whole time I was listening to it, I thought that that those guys were still in the army because they were calling him commander and anyway, I thought they were still in the army.
No, Chronicler in his mind says like the leader of the group, from the way he talked or something like that, he was like he was probably like a low level sergeant or something like that. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but he said something along the lines of he was like a lower level captain, someone who was in charge of other guys, but not like super high in the army. But they're definitely deserters.
It definitely makes the strife of the world very tangible. Because we're kind of experiencing, as I always feel like when I read it, I'm almost reading as if I'm chronicler in a way, because this is just a traveler, and if you were traveling, this is what you run upon, and they're just basically going to take your stuff. It's really interesting because the way it is written, he's obviously gone through this many times. He's prepared for it, So
well prepared.
He's very well prepared for it. Yeah, he does it in a really intelligent way, and even it's fun. It's so funny because the way they describe the whole thing, it's like the most gentlemanly. I don't remember the exact wording, but something along the lines of the most gentlemanly robbery, like that there can be, or something like that. They're polite to one another.
It went way better than what he anticipated. Could have been a lot worse. I mean, it wasn't, as far as robberies go, it wasn't that bad. Like, I mean, obviously it sucks. He got his horse taken. He got a lot of money taken. Got a lot of his, his brand new shirt that he never wore taken. Lost a lot of items, but they didn't beat the shit out of him.
Did he get some bacon taken?
Some bacon? I don't know.
I don't
if he
remember
got
that. He did have some food. I love the shirt because like he never even got to wear it. Like that's a nice little touch. Yeah. It was royal blue and like sounded like it was probably expensive. And the fact that he never got to wear it and then they take it is, I don't know, it's a good touch, man.
Yeah. So this is the that shirt that he gets back off the zombie guy, right? When this guy comes back in.
He does not
to the bar.
He doesn't get anything back from him. But that is the captain is the guy that becomes the skin dancer that gets overtaken by the skin dancer and comes into the bar, who ends up killing, I believe it's Shep is the one that gets killed. That is who the captain is. And so shortly after this, because it can't be that much longer than a few days after this event, and when Kvothe is telling his story to Chronicler, the first book, basically, when he's telling that, it can't be more than a handful of days after this point. So shortly after this, that captain is going to get overtaken by a skin dancer, and he's going to come to the bar, and he's going to kill Shep, and I believe it's Shep, not 100% sure, I can't remember off the top of my head, but believe it's Shep, and then they're obviously going to kill him with the skin dancer from there.
I had an observation of the chapter. The chapter title is very ironic, but then also very appropriate, because the day starts out with Chronicler observing how beautiful a day it was, and all this happens to him. And the end, he observes what a beautiful day it is. Which again speaks to how prepared he is for this, because it doesn't even fuck up his mood. It doesn't bother him. Which is, I don't know, maybe he's a stoic on top of everything else.
Well, yeah. Well, they didn't get, they got what he was willing to give them. They didn't catch any of his little hidden spots.
Okay. So I guess it's more of an inconvenience than anything else to him because of where his mindset is. Which, okay, so then again, that's really building out the state of the world at this point, where that in itself is a small inconvenience. That people are literally stealing all your stuff, and they kind of have, well, obviously it's a group of people to begin with, so what is he going to do? Right? It's like, what's Fix? 5 or 6 people? I think they said half a dozen.
I think it was half a dozen deserters, but losing the horse obviously sucks, and
that's a huge inconvenience in their world.
Yeah, and obviously times are tough. So like he thought he was just gonna go to the next town and get a horse, but obviously that wasn't the case. And so losing the horse was probably the biggest pain in the ass. But he still had money left over. He's not going to be starving to death or anything like that. He's not in danger of dying because of what they took. He's still going to make it. He's still going to be fine. He had enough money he could go buy another horse. Mm-hmm. So clearly he's not that bad off after the event. He lost some stuff, sucks, but he's not destitute because of it, because he still has enough money to afford a horse, and he's not even like, I'm gonna have to spend my last penny on affording this horse. He's just matter of factly, I can buy another horse. I'll be fine.
Well, and the whole thing is he can't find any. He can't find a source. Right?
Yeah.
There's like no one willing to sell.
Yeah, it shows you
I like
the state of the world.
I like Chronicler's savvy in this chapter. And yeah, he's at least experienced on the road, or he's just extremely clever, holding his money bags and the bread. And what's he got? One in the bottom of his inkwell or something?
Yeah, he's got a silver towel in the inkwell. He's got money in his shoe. He's got money in the bread. He's got money under his clothes. He's got multiple hiding places for his money. So he's been through this before. This isn't his first rodeo. He's experienced being robbed on the road before, and he's prepared for it.
So I like these little mentions, these little mentionings of religion, how they've been peppering it in with like little phrases. But in particular, when the commander, they keep calling him, looks at his neck and like the necklace basically, and he says he doesn't want to get between a man and his religion. Should the iron ring have felt odd to the commander?
No, because it's just, remember, it's not a giller or gilder, whatever you call it. It's just an iron ring. Think of like the ring that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Fella. So for the listener, like what Chronicler is wearing, he's just got a necklace with an iron ring, and it's just like a regular iron ring. It's not a gilder or anything like Kvothe makes when he's trying to prevent Ambrose from attacking him.
Or what Abenthy's wearing.
Yeah, with the masters, the arcanists, what they wear is like a gilder plus the little amulet that they wear is a little bit more. But that's not what he's wearing. Think of what he's wearing is more like when Fella in the second book, when Elodin is teaching naming, and Fella gets powerful enough, she knows the name of stone well enough that she's able to make a ring of stone. So she makes herself a ring of stone. That's what I think Chronicler is wearing, is he has gotten powerful enough to make a ring of iron. And so that is what he's wearing. There's nothing more to it than it's his iron.
That first scene, or at least when we're first introduced to naming in Elodin's class, that really changed the whole game for me as far as understanding the magic side of it in the book.
Yeah, that helps a lot. I mean, it obviously makes things way more clear.
But I still didn't catch what you were talking about.
Well,
I didn't catch that she made a ring.
Well, without that, and without Abenthy's, Giller and the Arcanist, I wouldn't even think anything of it. The first read through, you don't think anything of it. The only thing you think is, oh, so like in our world, people wear a religious artifact or piece around their neck. That's what you get out of it. But on further rereads, that's where I started to question, did old Patty screw something up here? But it's iron, so no, he didn't. He knows what he's doing.
Well,
good old Patty.
Here's like the thing, like had the guy, when he grabbed it, had he pulled back, then we would know that it is something more. It's a giller. I feel like I'm saying it wrong. Like it's a giller.
Did he actually grab it?
All right, no.
Yeah, he does. He rubs it in between his fingers.
A giller, hold on. A giller is one of the guys that who becomes an arcanist, and then he works for one of the masters. So he's basically like an assistant to the master. But what the fuck do they call
gilder?
Yeah, whatever, man.
It might be.
I don't fucking care. Yeah, it doesn't.
You clearly do.
Like, I mean, like, I'm not gonna sit there and get hung up on this.
You are.
Semantics.
You're literally getting hung up on it right now.
Yeah.
You are getting hung up on it in this moment, and it's bothering me. Fitz is very upset. He's just not saying anything.
Listen. I'll email Patty. And make sure that whatever it is in the book that it gets changed in all further productions of the book. Okay.
But yeah,
You don't even got to
so
worry about it.
I believe it's a giller because I know what a giller is. A giller is a person that is an arcanist that works for one of the masters. So I believe it's a gilder. But whatever the fuck it is, it doesn't matter.
Side note.
But had the officer grabbed that iron ring around his chest, if it was, something like the arcanist wear, he would have pulled his hand back. He would have felt like something happened, and
his hand would have gone numb or something like that. Yeah. I did have another sort of question that I hadn't picked up on earlier, but at one point, Chronicler is mentioning, he lost his horse and saddle. He could buy another one. It's not that big a deal. But then he says something along the lines of, he still had enough money to live comfortably until he finished this foolishness and met up with Scarpi and Treya. So when he's saying finish this foolishness, is he talking about, this moment right now, or is his mission foolishness? Is what he's out there doing? Is that what he's looking at in his mind? It's like a fool's errand.
Well, I don't think he's clearly, we know what he was trying to do. He was trying to see if the rumors about Kvothe were true.
Yeah.
And so I think the reason he's like this foolishness is he does not believe he's alive.
Okay.
Because, when he sees him and he's like, holy shit, it is you. Like after Kvothe saves him, he goes down to the bar and he's, the next day and he's like looking at him, he's like, oh shit, you are alive. Like there's clearly a revelation to it where he's like, he did not expect him to be alive. He did not expect to find Kvothe, and he did. And so I think that's what it's referencing.
Right on. That makes sense.
Yeah, because that's obviously, that's why he's going where he's going, is to see if Kvothe's alive. And I just think that means, he doesn't believe that he's going to be alive. And I think his reaction when he sees Kvothe demonstrates that, is he did not expect to actually find him.
Other than that, I like the chapter. I think it's a really clever way to sort of build out the world and introduce us to somebody that's going to be part of, the whole two books. I don't have a lot else to say on it, but
the only thing else I was going to comment on is he doesn't do anything. He doesn't fight back. He's just resigned to the fact that he's going to get robbed. And we know that once we move a little further in the book and we learn Chronicler has abilities, he has power. He's not doesn't seem like he's an arcanist, but it seems like that he knows the name of iron. He's got some sympathy, and he doesn't fight back at all. He's just resigned to his fate. And so I'm curious, because what I always think about it, if you know the name of iron, couldn't you call iron, all the iron that's in their blood, and just rip it out of their body and just kill them all at once?
I was more thinking about their weapons, but wow, I didn't think about that. But yes, there are multiple ways that he should be able to utilize or to leverage it to get out of the situation, which makes me wonder: is he under orders to make no waves, to not create any any attention to his presence or to anyone in that area? I don't know.
Or, it could be that he knows the name of iron, he has control over it, but he can't control it on that deep of a level, like the iron in your blood, and use it to actually kill you. And so, or he's worried maybe he'd be slow and these guys got bows and they could fucking loose an arrow on him and kill him before he has a chance to kill them. So there's reasons why you could come up with why he wouldn't fight back, even though he's very powerful. But there's something to it like that. He never uses it in a fight other than with Bast, which obviously we'll get into deeper when we get to that chapter. But he doesn't seem to utilize his power very often.
So speaking of that, Dan, if he if he did, if he had that kind of power, wouldn't you think that at least he'd show it with the Skrill?
He's caught off guard with the Skrill, so I don't know that there's much to learn. Like he just thinks he runs on some crazy person who's telling him that there's demons, and then all of a sudden this fucking spider the size of a wagon wheel comes skittering in and knocks him over and knocks him out, and that's it. Boom. He's just done in that fight in fucking like 2 seconds. So I don't know that it tells us anything.
Hey, what's he do? What does he do when the commander comes into the? I forget what happens.
He takes his sword.
When the commander comes into the bar.
He takes his sword from him and then stabs him with the sword. So he fights back against that guy, but he's very reserved. Like, he's clearly got some power, and none other than taking that guy's sword, and he doesn't stab him with it. I think the officer like grabs the hilt of the sword and like cuts his hand. And I don't know. I don't remember that if he necessarily stabs him with it, but the guy gets hurt.
Doesn't the kid Shep kills him, right? Shep's the one who kills him.
No.
Isn't that what you just said too?
No.
Isn't it the?
It's I believe Shep gets killed. It's Aaron.
Yeah, the young one.
The apprentice
Yeah.
to the smith is the one that kills him. He's got like an iron bar that he fucking smashes his face in. Obviously, it's Bast like hops on his back, scratches his face and shit, and gets Bast the reason, that
get the upper hand.
thing ends up getting killed, but Aaron's the one that delivers the killing blow. But it's neither here nor there. Like, I think as far as Chronicler, it's curious. It's just curious that he doesn't fight back here. He doesn't really. The only time he demonstrates that he's fucking powerful is against Bast, in a situation where Bast would have more than likely murdered him. But Chronicler was prepared to go to war with Bast. But in all the other situations, he just kind of stands back and lets shit happen.
Well, there's an interesting moment in this chapter that speaks to his. Well, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I could be reading too much into it, but he goes to take a piss, and a crow moves in the bushes, and he screams. He jumps back and like cries out in alarm. He then laughs at himself, but like when I read that, I'm like, why is he? I mean, maybe he's on edge because of these dudes, but if he's that powerful and they're gone, like, it seemed very alarmist, his reaction there. And why put it in the book?
Chronicler doesn't come off as, he comes off as clever, but not super powerful in this one. But let's move on to the next one.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, even in that moment, it's almost like he lacks backbone. It's suggestive that he lacks backbone in a variety of ways. And I don't know if he's playing a part, if that's what's going on here, but it seems that Rothfuss is suggesting that in a variety of ways. So,
yeah, he makes him very, very. I don't know what the word is. Skittery, not skittery, but
skittish.
Fidgety. Yeah, skittish. He's very skittish.
That's not good for penmanship.
Yeah, he does not seem brave. He's definitely does not come off as brave. But as we get further in, we're going to come across like he's clearly powerful, but he does not seem brave. He does not seem like he wants to fucking throw down. He ain't about the Kvothe life.
Well, so and I guess he does that. That when he attacks Bast, it's out of sheer panic. He's not being brave. He's being alarmist. Right? I mean, that's how it kind of read to me. Like, he freaked out.
Actually, you know what? Now that you say that, like, no, that part is pretty fucking brave. And he just out of nowhere attacked. But it seemed like an instinct thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, Chronicler is a tough guy to figure out. I don't know I don't understand a lot of Chronicler. He's tough to figure out. He's got a lot of power. He doesn't use it in certain situations, and then against Bast, he just uses it without even fucking thinking. So he's tough to figure out.
Well, there's clearly a reason why Roth is keeping us confused about it, because he's giving us things to doubt him. You know what I mean? But then also to show that he is it's a hard one to sort of come to grips with. Which, I mean, in itself to me is interesting. But yeah, he's an enigmatic sort of character for sure.
Yeah, he's very, very tough. And then with his relationship with Scarpy, the big aspect of that is, we talked about briefly in the first episode. We talked about how there seems to be like a difference between Kote versus Kvothe. Okay, and we're gonna get more into that in the next chapter. But the fact that Scarpy seems to be friendly with Chronicler, we know like Chronicler doesn't see him like as a mentor. He sees him like as kind of an acquaintance and as an equal, as a work partner type of person. But we know like there's a very big distinction between Kote versus Kvothe. It's obviously, it plays out huge in the books. I don't know, like for someone who's reading it the first time, you might not fully notice it, but there is a dramatic difference between Kote versus Kvothe as a person. And it's very similar to Kvothe's time in Tarbean, when he's that little kid who's wandering the streets. He's a bum. He's not using his sympathy. He's not using his wits. He's just struggling. He's not the same person. And when he's in Tarbean, it is Scarpy that pulls him out of that. He talks about, like, why didn't I leave Traben? And he was like, he gave a bunch of reasons, but then he ultimately said, I needed someone to wake me up. I needed to meet Scarpy. And Scarpy told him a couple stories. Scarpy says his name when Scarpy doesn't know his name. Kvothe has never given him his name. When Scarpy tells him the second story, Scarpy says Kvothe, even though he's never gotten Kvothe's name from Kvothe. And from that moment, the time that Scarpy tells both his stories and Scarpy says his name, Kvothe that next day has like the light switch has gone on, and then he just runs roughshod over that town, gets money, gets clothes, gets necessities, and then he's headed to Imre and headed to the university the next day. So Scarpy is able to kind of wake him up out of this daze that he's in Tarbean. That very much mirrors the Kote versus Kvothe dynamic that we see in the bar in these early chapters, as we see like people kind of looking at him and they see these differences. They see the vibrancy returning and disappearing. Like we see this change in Kote versus Kvothe.
Yeah, they say even like his eyes light on fire and his hair turns real red, and there's a whole bunch of things like that.
Correct.
Yeah, he looks younger, and then he looks older as well. We even saw that in the first chapter, where the lines of his face will come back, and he'll start to look aged again. But they'll get these glimpses of him looking younger. That's interesting. So as you mentioned, Scarpy stories. So Chronicler, is it pulling the story out of Kvothe? Is it making him tell the story that's trying to get him to, wake up again, like Scarpy woke him up in Tarbean?
Well, what I think is the fact that it was Scarpy that seemed to wake him up out of Tarbean. There was definitely a dramatic change. Anybody who's going through the books, they can see it's a dramatic change after Kvothe hears those two stories from Scarpy, and then Scarpy says his name. There's a dramatic change. A light switch. He was there for 3 years almost, and the second he meets Scarpy, 2 days later, he's on his way to the university, back to himself. So there's a major shift, and the fact that Chronicler seems to be working with Scarpy, in cahoots with Scarpy, raises a huge red flag for me when I'm reading these books is, why is Chronicler going after Kvothe? Why is he there? And I think that one of the possibilities could be is that Chronicler is there to wake Kvothe back up, from Kote back to Kvothe. I think that's one of the major things that Chronicler could represent in this story, is he could be filling the Scarpy role when Kvothe was a little kid and Tarbean. Like, he could be filling that role now while Kote is in the bar to wake him up and make him Kvothe again.
That makes me curious about who they are, like the Scarpy and Chronicler, what group they're in. You know what I mean? Like Rothfuss clearly has a lot of respect for stories, and I mean there's the layering of stories throughout the book that make up this world. I really like this idea that what Chronicler would be doing, if that's his goal, if that's what his mission is, he would literally, what I'm envisioning is he would be using Kvothe's story to wake Kvothe up. So it'd be Kvothe actually saying it. At least that's what we can assume he could be possibly doing. There could be more to it. You know, there is another book that we haven't read yet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's tough to know for certain. Like, you know, as my instincts tell me that Scarpy could be part of the Amir. I think he could be a member of the Amir, because he just goes into this town in Tarbean and he's telling these stories to these kids that just happens to be the stories that wake Kvothe up, and he knows Kvothe's name, and I think he was there for a purpose. And from his interactions with the priests in town, makes me feel like that he's part of the Amir.
He's telling the true story of life anyway, the most important story of the whole the whole books.
Yeah, he tells a massively important story to the world, and he's telling these little kids. It's not like, I mean, it feels like there is some major reason he's there, and it seems like, considering, like, you know, what happens to Kvothe's parents and all that kind of stuff, that it seems like Scarpy is there for a reason, and that makes me think that he very well could be part of the Amir. And if he's part of the Amir, that makes me think that maybe Chronicler is also part of the Amir, or Chronicler is being used by the Amir and he's unwitting about it. But he's that one of the two. I think Scarpy is probably part of the Amir, and I think that Chronicler is either part of the Amir or being used unwittingly by the Amir.
So it brings up an important point that I noticed in this chapter. Since we're talking about this chapter, when I first read it, I was almost put off by how quick and easy Chronicler found Kvothe in the middle of the woods, in the middle of some burned out house, happened upon his fire. And it seemed like, as I kept reading it, the coincidences, you know, between him and Denna and this and that, all kept building up. So at this point, when I was reading, I know it kind of, I feel that there's a lot more reason to the coincidences, but at this point I was just like, how does Chronicler just happen upon him?
Well, we know, because at the end of book one, it's at the end of book one, Bast and Chronicler have a conversation with each other, and Bast is like, you know, how did you hear about Kvothe being here? And he's like, actually, you know, somebody said they got you drunk. Some farmer said they got you drunk and that you spilled the beans. And Bast looks at him and is like, you think some fucking farmer could get me drunk? And he's like, no, I was sending out feelers. I was trying to get someone to come looking. I've been sending out messages. He was like, you're just the first message. Just the first. I've been sending out messages in bottles. You're just the first one that came came looking. You're the first one that's got the message. So it wasn't a coincidence. It was Bast deliberately trying to make this happen, and it just happens that Chronicler and Scarpy are the first ones to get this message in a bottle, and then they come looking for Kvothe. He's not randomly traveling this way. He is specifically looking to see if Kvothe is alive, because he heard a rumor that he is, and he heard that rumor from Bast.
We don't know. We don't have like the Bast conclusion with Chronicler, so we know what brought Chronicler there. But yeah, I mean, the impact of Scarpy's story is it's way too important to the change of Kvothe's life to just put that on happenstance. It doesn't work that way, man. Like there's a reason. Something drew him there for Kvothe. That's the way I look at it as well. And we don't really know exactly what that is. It could be some power of the Amir, something that if they're both of the Amir, then maybe there's something we're not privy to yet. But yeah, it does seem like there's something going on there with that Scarpy story.
And let me just make one thing clear, just in case the audience is struggling to follow along, because we're just kind of throwing out. We're assuming you've read the books, and we're assuming that you have kind of a grasp of the story. The Amir are the group one of the big groups that's after the Chandrian. So in Scarpy's story, there's a group of people that decide that they want to go after the Chandrian, and it's led by Celotos, who is the guy in Scarpy's story that stabs a rock in his eye, and he's talking to Haliax, and Celotos starts a group that's called the Amir, and that's kind of who we're referencing. There was a human offshoot of that group, but there was also like a group of very powerful people that started it, that were immortals. They're the ones that started the Amir. That's kind of who we're referencing. It seems to be like a big enemy of the Chandrian. That's pretty much, though, like, as far as this chapter, that's pretty much covers everything that I would have to say on it. Obviously, we'll get more into Chronicler, we'll get more into the Amir, we'll get more into all that kind of stuff as we go along when it becomes more relevant. But that pretty much covers everything that I would have to say on this chapter. I don't know if you guys got any additional comments, but that pretty much covers everything I had to say on it.
Oh, yeah, me too. Okay. So chapter 3 is called Wood and Word. Kote gets his mounting board in this chapter for his sword Folly. And later on, a group of travelers come into the bar. Kvothe is recognized by this guy after singing Tinker Tanner. So Kvothe fakes an injury, and he goes up to bed. He tells Bast to go down and drug the guy. And then the next day, he goes to the smith and he gets some iron to fight the Skrills.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff in this chapter. So obviously, like, right off the bat, we get Graham coming in, and we get one of those Kote versus Kvothe dynamics, because he looks at him and he's like, Graham noticed the difference. The innkeeper's gestures weren't as extravagant. His voice wasn't as deep. His eyes weren't as bright as they had been a month ago. Their color seemed duller. They were less sea foam, less green grass they had been. They were like river weed, like a bottom of a green glass bottle. And his hair had been bright before, the color of flame. Now it seemed red, just red hair color, really. So we see this dramatic change. It's not just like a little bit of a shift in personality like that he's acting. There's a physical difference between Kvothe versus Kote. He's like physically degrading. He's changing. He's not the same person that he was. Not not even just a few months ago. He's not even the same person he was just a few months ago. There's a dramatic shift in who he is.
And it brings back that sort of somber feeling of chapter 1, which, I mean, that makes sense. We're back in the bar. We're back with Kvothe, this group. And yeah, that sort of melancholy nature is definitely suggested by the descriptions you just mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. It's a dramatic difference, and you know, we constantly get these changes in who he is. These moments where he goes from being this dull innkeeper that's just methodically going about his day. There's no vibrancy to him. There's no energy to him. And then, like, just certain things happen and he snaps back and his physical appearance changes. His hair gets brighter. His eyes get darker. They get brighter green. Like, he physically changes. And then he quickly pulls it back too. Like, it's when he catches himself, he quickly pulls it back. So it's not just something when we're talking about the difference between Kvothe versus Kote. It's not just something that he's putting on a show or he's acting. There's dramatic differences between who he really is versus who he's pretending to be, and it results in physical changes.
What it really suggests to me is that when he's active, when he's busy, he starts to get that vibrancy back, and he kind of even gets close to like joking around a little bit. But it's when he's by himself, so it's when the activity stops that it's just like he goes straight to that melancholy nature. We saw it in chapter 1 when he's in the room by himself. It's every time he's by himself, it's just like, dude, he's holding a mantle of just heavy weight upon him, and he sinks into it like instantly. As soon as the activity's over, he sinks right into it.
Also, oppositely, when he's Kvothe and on fire, like when he's with Felurian, it's bright, it's in your face, like you can. By the way, the descriptions that Rothfuss does in these situations where he's comparing the two, anyway, they're excellent descriptions every time. He gives you such a good feel for a real good feeling about how things are.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other aspect, obviously, is Graham's bringing in the mounting board, which he's going to bring down. He's going to use for the sword Folly. And when he brings a couple of things, like one, the mounting board, it's made of that wood, Roa.
That same wood from the box?
Yeah. And so we're talking about, a piece of it the size of your thumb is worth gold. And so he's got a mounting board of it. So obviously this is extremely expensive. And
they talk about how far away he has to go to get it, how difficult it is to work with.
Correct, yeah.
What I found really, really interesting, sort of following up that part, is they seem to layer subtly a lot of like mystique around the sword, where Bast is even like, "Hey, can I ask you a question? The hell were you thinking? Why are you displaying, or why are you even thinking about displaying this?" That was really interesting to me because they don't really even go into detail as to the story behind it, but there's a lot of weight, it seems, behind the story of the sword.
That's the big question, because like he hangs up the sword, he puts up the mounting board, and then Bast comes down, and it's like, what the fuck were you thinking, man? And we don't know what he had to do to get that sword. We don't have a full picture on, did he steal it? Did he kill someone for it? Is that when in a handful of chapters when Chronicler's like, this is the face of a man who's killed an angel. Did he kill an angel for it? Did he kill Cinder? Is it Cinder's sword? Like, we don't have a good idea of whose sword it is, but clearly he's either stole it from someone or killed someone for it, and it seems like it's a very old sword, and it seems like a sword that someone very powerful had wielded it before him.
It definitely seems like there's a lot of controversy behind it in some way, shape, or form. That seems very clear just from the way they're talking about it.
So, and when that guy comes into the bar and recognizes him and talks about the stones blown up around the spot, however he utilized that sword had to be powerful, whoever he killed.
Yes.
There's no indication that those two things are connected. There's no indication that he used that sword to kill anybody. The guy doesn't mention a sword at all.
We don't get...
okay, I guess I mean, assumed.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think in the two books we hear about Kvothe training to use a sword, but I don't remember him being in a sword fight. Well, it's got to be the end of book 2 if that even happens. So he's not known for that.
He gets in a sword fight when he goes and rescues the 2 girls from the guys that were pretending to be Rue.
But that's not his strong suit by any means.
No.
Yeah.
Like I don't. There's no indication that the sword that he's hanging up on the bar is
like his trusty
weapon. Has to do with the person he killed and the shattered cobblestone. There's no indication that those two things are connected. Could be. I mean, they could be. There's no indication that they're not, but there's no indication that they are. It's just, we have no clue one way or the other.
Well, I noticed Folly comes up a lot, the word itself in Rothfuss's stuff, and it seems like whatever, like what does his dad say?
Beware of folly.
What does Kvothe's dad
that's
say about folly?
Abinthy writes in the book he gives him, beware of folly. Or wait, was it his dad's song that was...
No, you're right.
Remember your father's song,
but his dad says...
Yeah, there's a lot of mentions of folly, and I think, all the warnings of beware of folly and all the different events that are mentioned as folly to him, I think that's probably where he came up with the name for the sword. It's a reminder of, what Abinthy warned him of and all the dumb decisions that different people had made that were clearly acts of folly. And I think, that's clearly, why he probably named his sword Folly. But yeah, Folly, it comes up a ton.
Because you think Kvothe regrets whatever he's done. He regrets things that led him to where he's at.
I'm not.
Do you agree?
Well, yeah, I think he definitely regrets things that he done that has led him to being hiding out in the bar. The fact that he stole the sword, I'm not sure, because when he talks about it, he's like, the times where I made my best decisions were the times I didn't think about it. So it doesn't seem like whatever he did to get the sword, it doesn't seem like he has a lot of regret over that. It seems like he felt like he was just acting and not thinking, and that's the times where he makes his best decisions. It seems like he thinks he did the right thing. Whatever he did to get the sword, it seems like he thinks he did the right thing.
Dude, that quote you just mentioned, that paragraph in itself, I think is huge. I think it's huge. I've thought so much more about those moments because there's so many moments where he thinks too much, and when he doesn't think so much and he follows instincts, that's when he has his biggest successes. And he does say it plainly. My greatest successes came from decisions I made when I stopped thinking and simply did what felt right, even if there was no good explanation for what I did, even if there were very good reasons for me to not do what I did. But I think that like drives at part of the biggest crux of the problem he deals with, where he thinks too much. And there's many times where he talks about how great his memory is, and that's probably his biggest tool, why he excels so much in what he does. But it's when he follows his instincts, and he starts to learn to do that. I mean, Alodin's trying to tell him this. He's trying to teach him to do this. And then he starts to get it from Tempe, and so he's getting subtly not even pushed in that direction. He's being like pulled in that direction, and he's resistant because he's so witty and so smart. So it's like this inner battle with himself, that I think is just a massive part of what appeals to me about Kvothe to begin with, and his character arc throughout the book, and his how he learns to adapt and how to, be a better individual. But now he's at his lowest. At this point, I mean, right now he's at his lowest point, and he's speaking of it. He's speaking of it here, which I find really interesting that he's cognizant of it in this moment because he's at his lowest point. But yeah, I've thought so many times about this in so many different situations that he finds himself in, that if he would have just followed his instincts more so and not gotten in his own way, and I guess we're all like that. I mean, that's a wise man's fear, right?
Yeah.
Or folly itself.
Yeah.
Tripping over your own feet.
I'm curious what he did to get the sword, and I'm curious whose sword it is, because I would like to judge it for myself whether he made the right decision or not. Bast seems to think that it was a very questionable decision.
Yeah, I think it got him notoriety from the way Bast talks about it. But I also love, like, when Bast comes down with the sword, it's just like swinging, and he's like, "Whoa, hey, dude!" Like, what's he say? That's a lady. Yeah. But like, it adds more mystique to it. So like, dude, respect it, man. But yeah, it is. It's a really curious little thing that he throws to us, and then we don't get anything else about it, right? I mean, it's all. It's just it's there. It's clearly a big thing that's suggested early. And it feels like there's foreshadowing, and then we never get anything else about it.
Yeah, the only thing about like a weird sword that we get for that, we get
cinder swords.
Aspects of the Adim swords are obviously weird because they seem to not be able to break or rust or anything. Nothing happens to those swords. They seem to stay in perfect condition, for thousands of years. But then the other only mention of a sword that's weird is Cinder's sword.
Yeah.
So I'm curious whether maybe it could be Cinder's sword, maybe it could be, an angel sword, or it seems like someone very powerful's sword. What
does he say about Cinder's sword?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was pale. It didn't show the firelight, things like that. There was just mentions of it where it seemed weird. It seemed strange, very similar to this sword is described as something weird and something different, and the Adim swords are described as something different. I don't necessarily mean that this sword is Cinder's sword or this sword is an Adim sword. I'm just saying the three descriptions of swords where there's something different about them are all with swords that seem to be thousands of years old. So it makes me believe that this sword, whether it's Cinder's, whether it's an Adim sword, whether it's an angel's, it seems like it came from a place from thousands of years ago that is from someone very powerful. It doesn't seem like it's clearly not an ordinary sword. So it makes me believe that he either got it from someone like Cinder, someone in the Chandrian, someone, from the Adim, or someone, an angel, or an Amir, or someone like that. It seems like the sword is clearly came from someone extremely powerful.
Yeah, I think the only description that they give at this point of his sword is that it's not marred up, it's not scratched up, and that it looks like it's forged from the remnants of 100 swords or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that the only two? The only two descriptions?
Yeah, it's interesting to describe something as looking new yet thousands of years old. Right? Like it's unmarred, there's no scratches, there's no rusting and nothing like that on it, but it's still obviously extraordinarily old. Which is interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so there's something to do with the sword. We just don't have enough information to pinpoint who it is, but it's not going to be fucking Joe Schmo fucking had a sword and I fucking stole it from him.
It's
going to be someone important is going to have the fucking sword that he gets it from. I think that's baked into the cake at this point. But then, as we move along, we get the caravan of people come into the bar. We get the introduction of, first, again, times are tough, times are rough. People want to travel together in big groups. They don't want to travel alone. So you get a big mix of people traveling together. And once they get, settled in, we also get our first introduction to a tinker in person, which obviously we talked about a good bit in the first episode, but we get our first introduction to a tinker in this chapter. Not a lot to learn from him. He's just kind of off on the side, but that's our first interaction with a tinker is in this episode.
Well,
in this chapter.
There are some details about the tinker that I appreciated, that I felt like they got really legitimized. It just in the sense that he's got limes from Tenue and cinnamon and salt and chocolate from Tarbine and polished home from Araway, however you say that. So I mean, he's not just some dude with stuff. He's got stuff from all over the world, and he can provide these things. So I mean, he's a big. That's a huge asset to have this guy traveling around. He's keeping people in nourishment, but he's also keeping them in the ability to have these things that they don't have in their town. Clearly, outside of the tinker, they don't have a freaking Walmart down the street. Right? They don't have a city market, it seems like. It seems like this guy is extraordinarily important in terms of what he provides. Also, just like his little it's not a limerick. Just like I kind of picture when he's yelling the stuff out, like going to a baseball game, the guy selling beer.
Well, I kind of think of it like, have you ever seen... Probably the two places I've seen it the most is in Vegas and in Tijuana. If you walk by a business establishment, there is some dude outside. Like in Vegas, you get it. It's all those guys like slapping cards on their hand. Fucking, it's all for their fucking prostitutes. Fucking handing out fucking cards for prostitutes in Vegas. If you've never been to Vegas, it's a fucking trippy experience when you're walking down and you got these guys slapping cards together. Like, hey, man, hey, check this out. And they hand it to you, and it's just a card for fucking to call a prostitute. and like Tijuana, it's a very similar thing, except for they're just trying to get you to go into the bar. And so they're just fucking running up to you and hassling you, trying to like herd you like you're sheep or cattle into the bin, trying to shuffle you into their bars.
New Orleans has the same sort of thing where there'll be a guy like just right outside the bar, maybe playing like a harmonica or some shit, or he's just kind of trying to chat you up a little bit and be like, yeah, look what we got going on, and just try to like get you to come in the bar. The Vegas thing's funny, man, because for me, the first time I went out there, it's something about popping it and handing it. Where the first time I was there, I was like, oh, it's just like you naturally take these things. Oh, what is this? And then you take a couple and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Now I have trash I have to get rid of. This guy's handing me these cards. So, I don't know, after the first time, it's like, okay, I'm never grabbing this again. But
in Los Angeles, I'd run into that all the time. Like, it was more subtle in Los Angeles is I'd be walking on
the dudes with
like
CDs. Hollywood
Boulevard, and like they would just hold something out, and you just like reach up and grab it, and then you're like, where the fuck did I get this fucking pamphlet? Like, why am I holding this fucking garbage in my hand right now?
I remember when I first moved to LA, these guys would hand out their mix CD or the CD, and I'm like, I just grab it, and they're like, wait, that's $8, that's $8. I'm like, wait, what? Like, why are you giving me this? It's like, well, no, and then he's trying to sell me on he's a rapper, and I'm like, look, man, I like rap music, but I buy someone's shit I know.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to buy your random CD.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of, that's where I'm thinking of, like, when I see this tinker out there, shuffling and doing his song and dance to these kids and these townspeople, like, that's the kind of people I'm picturing as these street hustlers, just straight hustling.
That is not what I was picturing. Again, the whole reason why I wasn't picturing, maybe I was at first, but when I got the lines about buttons and bags of cinnamon and salt and limes from Tenue and chocolate from Tarbean, and that wasn't coming from him. That was coming from the narrator. So that's what kind of told me that he was more legitimate. That, I don't know, in my mind, that legitimized Tinkers to serve a more, worldly purpose. Yeah, but then we also get, along with that, we get the Song of the Chandrian, right? At the same time. No, I don't mean to change subjects, but that was in the same. It's in the same vein.
Like as far as like the Tinkers, like, obviously I have, going back to the first episode, I have, bigger theories on them. I think they're more powerful. Just that it's that little song and dance they're doing, like, Tinker here, gone today, here today, gone tomorrow. Like that showmanship is, I look at that as similar to those annoying ass street performers. Is every time he does that kind of stuff, that's what I think of. Obviously they're more powerful and, got more shit, more prestige, but they still got that street showman, man. Whether they're some bum on the street or they're fucking powerful ass Tinkers, they all got that same fucking showmanship. But yeah, then you get the little kids get bored with him when they realize he's not going to be handing out shit for free, and then they go into the song about the Chandrian.
Yeah, that was huge. The fact that that's coming from kids tells you how and big this is in their world. I always pictured when I read it. Geez, how am I drawing a blank? The plague song that every kid has sang. Rings around the rosy, pocket full of posts. Yeah. I kind of pictured that. That once I got older and realized what that song is, I'm like, wait, how old? That's the oldest song. I would assume that's one of the oldest songs that still exist in our world. That still exists in our culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
it's about carrying flowers so you don't have to smell the dead.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. It's about the plague, right? So and so to me, that's what I thought of with this. So and what's so great about this is it's a song with instruction, right? And it's telling people, and I think we got a taste of that in the first chapter. If I remember right, there's a song about the Chandrian.
Yeah, what are the three? The first one is...
it's an instruction. Sorry, yeah, it's an instruction about the Chandrian, yeah.
Yeah, so like it starts off, when the hearth fire turns to blue, what to do, run outside, run and hide. What's interesting about it is, obviously it's the second chapter, it's little kids singing a little, like a nursery rhyme type of song, but it's 100% accurate. When the hearth fire turns to blue, what to do, run outside, run and hide. Yeah, if you see blue fire, you should run and hide, because the Chandrian are fucked up dudes and they will murder you. Then when his eyes are black as crow, where to go, near and far, here they are. Eyes are black as crow, that's Cinder.
Mm-hmm.
Cinder's got the goat eyes, no iris. It's accurate. See a man without a face, move like ghosts from place to place. What's their plan? Chandrian. That's Haliax. And again, we don't know their plan. Like, this nursery rhyme is dead on.
Well, what's so interesting about what's their plan is, that's what Kvothe spends these 2 books trying to find out.
No, we're getting introduced to the Chandrian. Obviously, we got him a little bit in the first chapter with the shit about Taborlin the Great versus the Chandrian, but getting a nursery rhyme where we're getting the blue flames, we're getting Haliax, we're getting Cinder, we're getting what's their plan. That's the theme of the book. Cinder, Haliax, what's their plan? Those are 3 of the biggest fucking questions in the book. And we're getting right away.
This chapter, now that you guys say it, this chapter is huge for just like random, like whole plot lines of the book.
Yeah,
little tidbits, but whole plot lines.
Just that little children's line. That children's limerick. That's central to the entire story. That's what he's focused on is Cinder, Haliax, and the Chandrian, and you're getting those, from a nursery rhyme, very, very early on, second chapter.
Well,
it's fucking It's
what,
wild.
what I love about it so much is he's chosen to make the plot, the biggest plot of the story, something that is evident to everyone in the world, yet we you can't find information about it. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody knows about it. It's in the back of everybody's mind. A lot of people at this point, pretend it doesn't exist because it's, it's like fable. It's like believing in ghosts. But that's just such an interesting choice for the author, because the way we get introduced to it is in these children's songs, right? And then what we got earlier, where this is just part of their world from the beginning of time, it seems like. And then this is what he ends up having to go after. Yet it's extraordinarily challenging because you can't find information about it. It's such a really interesting way to create an enemy, a challenge.
He drops tidbits of the significance of it too, Tim. Again, when Abinthy's talking to Kvothe's parents about him, and he says, the one. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
What's interesting is that he introduces these big themes that obviously that's, you go through both books and then you read those limericks and you're like, shit, these are the central themes of the story, but they're just in the background. The first time you're reading it through, it's just like it's basically like if you're watching a movie, you just hear these kids singing in the background, but you're listening to the main characters talk, and that's just background noise. But he put the theme of the story in the background noise.
Yeah, it's just part of the scene. It makes up what is the entirety of the scene, but it's not the focal point. Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't stand out at all. Like, if you're going through it the first time, you're not thinking like they just laid out what this book is going to be about in this little part. It's just like it's written in a way where it's like he just heard this in the distance, and so it seems like, when you're going through the first time, it would seem like it is something where it's just like adding a little bit of character to the scene, like you're hearing what he's hearing in the background, like some bustling noise. Maybe like you could replace it with like guys were fucking throwing dice in the background or playing cards, arguing over cards. Like, you could replace it with something like that. You don't realize that's the central theme of the story, and he just put it in there very fucking subtly. He's so good at just subtly layering these things on and just introducing you to him, like just subliminally almost introducing you to concepts and introducing you to characters, and then as you go along he just builds and builds and builds and builds, and so you don't even realize why you're familiar with a character or with a concept or with a aspect of the story as you go along, but it's because he built these things in so subtly and introduced them so slowly that everything just seems to just make sense, and you're not even thinking about why it makes sense, but it makes sense because he layered it all in for you.
Yeah, they're almost like little motifs that get pushed into our subconscious because of the subtlety.
Yeah.
But then they end up taking a more dominant role, which is fucking, it's great.
I remember what I was going to bring up, and it speaks to the same thing that you were saying, Tim, about the significance of the Chandrian in their world, and also the subtlety. When Abinthy's talking to Kvothe's mom and dad about the Chandrian, and he says, you don't believe in demons or whatever, but anybody says that, they're out in the woods, would you go out there? Yeah, I'd still go out there. What if 2 people said it? Yeah, I'd still go out there. But what if everybody said it? Would you still go out? Like, everybody in this world may not mention it, but the Chandrian, they all know the Chandrian are real, or at least most people think so. It's a reality.
Well, it seems to be one of those things that even if they deny it, they're not going to tempt fate. You know what I mean? They're at least careful about it. And we're not getting that now, but that gets layered in further. So it's a great one of those those little subtleties, and the way that he pushes. So he doesn't. That's what I was kind of mentioning earlier. That he kind of draws you in. He doesn't push these things on you, and that's just
it's
quality
very subtle.
writing.
It's very subtle.
Sprinkles them in.
But and then from there, we get introduced to Tinker Tanner, the oldest drinking song, older than God. More verses, and Kvothe, he sings more verses to the song than any of the people had ever heard before. So there's a couple aspects of that. One is it's Tinker Tanner, the oldest song, older than God. So that lends credence to the fact that the Tinkers go back thousands of years, that maybe they're from the Fae, like I talked about in episode 1. That lends a little credence to that. So that kind of, throws another block on that building. But also, Kvothe doesn't play music in this bar. And, of course, there was no music. And then there's also the scene where Bast goes to Chronicler. Don't ask him about, why he can't do his sympathy. Don't ask him about his music. But he sings a song. So it makes me think that there's a distinction between him singing versus him playing music. So that it seems to lend that there's something more, his ability to play music, it seems that there's something more to it than just necessarily him just music in general, his singing. If you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, no, I follow you. And actually the paragraph that leads up to that, they talk, what is talked about is that he's in the middle of all this activity, but the way that it's talked about is he was like a man attending a large complex machine, ready with a drink. He talked and listened in the right amounts. He laughed at jokes. He shook hands, smiled, whisked coins off the bars as if he truly needed the money. It sounds like he's playing a role. You know what I mean? So when he's singing the song, yes, he's singing the song, but he's not, his heart, I mean, maybe I'm jumping to a conclusion, but I think this ties in with what you're saying, is that it feels like his heart's not in it. When he's playing music, it's not just his heart's in it. He tells his story in a way that, it moves people. When he's just singing this song, it's a song everybody knows, and I would say he's probably even enjoying himself to a degree, but he's playing that role. He's just keeping the bar going, it seems.
Yeah, it seemed like he wasn't thinking why he was doing it. He was just having fun in the moment.
It kind of slipped.
He just got lost in the moment, and that's why, they talk about, after the guy notices him and he ends up, faking an injury and going upstairs, then Bass notices, the vibrancy was gone and, the twinkle in his eye was gone, that kind of stuff. It seems like he was just kind of enjoying the moment. He wasn't thinking about it. He was just acting. He was just doing it, enjoying himself. But the fact that he can sing, but he doesn't play music, I think there might be something significant to that says that his ability to play music, his use of his hands, because there's also that scene where he fights the two guys that try to rob him at the bar in the second book. And he tries to use the ADM hand movements, and he's able to do the movements, but they don't work right. So maybe there's something to do with playing music, his using his hands, his physical body there's something wrong with it. There's something different than just singing.
He's definitely not himself.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
I understand what you're saying, but I hadn't thought about that. I mean, the music side of it, the way he describes the music throughout, we've talked about that, about how important it is in this world. But no, and I was actually surprised because it was, Rothfuss describes it right at the beginning that of course there's no music, but I hadn't distinguished between singing and music.
Well, it also plays in.
Go ahead.
So I was just going to say it also plays in pretty perfectly with something he did in the first chapter and he's doing in this chapter, which I think is tremendous, which is this ebb and flow that he's doing, where he talks about the vibrancy coming back into his hair, the glimmer coming back into his eyes, people noticing him not being as old as they thought he was, blah, blah. That comes, and then it immediately goes away. It's like we kind of went over it, but before this group comes in, and it's just Bast and Kvothe sort of like cleaning up and doing what they do in the place, they're not just doing it, they're doing it with a reluctance to finish whatever task they were close to completing, as if they both dreaded the moment when the work would end and the silence would fill the room again. So there, that somberness and that heavy weight is constantly rushing back. And it seems like the activity that he goes through keeps it at bay, but then it's rushing right back. Again, every time he's alone, it comes right back. And what was really interesting is what I just read. The next thing that is said is then something odd happened. The door opened and noise poured into the Waystone Inn like a gentle wave. So, and then the group comes in, blah, 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 and everything moves from there. And then now it's all bustle and activity, and now he's singing, right? And it even gets to the point where now he's singing. But what's really interesting about the way that's worded, it sounds like this doesn't happen. They don't have customers. People aren't coming in there very often. And so, and if this is how he is when he's alone, no wonder Bast, got Chronicler to come. Because, and the end of this, I think it's the end of this chapter, maybe it's like the next one. There's their relationship between Bast and Chronicler, or Bast and Kvothe. He clearly cares genuinely about him, almost to a degree that makes me uncomfortable. But that tells me that it would make sense for him to then lead Chronicler there, because it's that ebb and flow that he does. And again, this is a compliment to Rothfuss, because he does it so well in the first chapter and in this chapter. And I feel like that flow is reaching a peak moment with Kvothe singing, but then again, it constantly comes right back, and it goes back down to the ebbs. He fakes the injury, shows his phenomenal acting skills, because
melancholy's back.
Yeah, but he even fools Bast with his acting that he's injured. But as soon as he gets back up there, he's basically putting food in his mouth just to store it in his stomach. It's like that melancholy is constantly,
and that makes you uncomfortable, right, Tim?
It's not that. It's the moments where dude. If we're gonna jump all the way to the end of the chapter, it's when Bast is like petting his head, and he's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, and he's singing him a lullaby.
Yeah, he sings him a lullaby. He's kind of like, yeah, well. But I went past a lot of shit there. What I was talking about there was like how great Rothfuss writes that in a small little thing that is worth mentioning, and I would definitely promote listening to the Audible on this. When he writes the drunk kid, and the drunk kid, like how he writes him, you totally get that he's drunk. It's great. You can say he's inebriated, but like the man pressed ahead with the dogged persistence of the inebriated, like that's great. That's great, man. And that's the first time we get Kvothe the Bloodless. We don't know what it means. We just get that line. So he like Dan was saying earlier, he's subtly giving us these things that will eventually, it foreshadoes.
Yeah, we get what the huge thing, obviously the huge reveal is, like, if you're going through it the first time, is Kote is Kvothe. Like, you're just learning his name for the first time. So you're learning that his actual name is Kvothe. You're learning Kvothe the Bloodless, which, going through it, we know that's from the whippings. And also it could from the whippings and not bleeding during them. And then also that he's a Demaroo, which is the equivalent of having no noble blood, no, as low bloodline as you could have. So that kind of combination. Get that he's a singer in Imre. And then we get he killed a man in Imre. And when he killed him, he shattered the cobblestones beyond men. No one can fix the cobblestones that he shattered. My guess is, if I had to put my money on it, who he killed, I'd put my money on Ambrose.
I hope.
I hope too. That'd be sweet. Fuck that dude.
It's a good spot. Did
you say the guy said it was in Imre?
Yeah, it's in Imre. It's where he where he plays his music and that kind of stuff. That same,
What?
just
Okay.
just
When he,
just the other side of town of the university.
wait, he
And
said he said the Aeolian. Or no, sorry, no. He said the fountain, and there's a fountain right outside the Aeolian, right?
yeah, he said, yeah, killed a man by the fountain.
Okay.
Cobblestones were shattered beyond mend. So the big thing is, it's got to be, if you're talking about in Imre, you would think it's got to either be Ambrose or Dennis Patron. I can't think of anybody else
Could be one of the
who
same.
he would have killed that would matter to the story. That would make sense to, like, unless it's just some character we haven't met yet, which I doubt. Doesn't seem like that would be his style, that he would write it like that. So seems like it's going to be a character we've already met, and of the characters we've already met or have heard about, seems like it's either Ambrose or her patron are the only two people he would kill.
It is definitely
in Imre.
suggestive of that someone of consequence.
Yeah.
Is killed because he says him. And it's the way he says it. It's not like you killed a man. He says him. So yeah, there's definitely a suggestion that it's someone of consequence. My mind goes to the same place where it's either, yeah, I would think either the patron or Ambrose, or maybe they are one and the same, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or
I assume it's Ambrose. That's my guess. That's the obvious choice. He could obviously be throwing us off, but the obvious choice is Ambrose. I think, the vast majority of people would probably believe it's Ambrose.
And I really hope that it's not her patron, Ambrose.
Oh.
I mean, that Ambrose is not her Dennis patron.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
I mean, we can rule him out. The patron's an old man. It's described as a white-haired old noble, and she dated Ambrose.
Yeah,
it's not Ambrose. We know that.
When I read through them dating again, that made me feel like it's definitely not.
I feel like I have a high degree of probability of who her patrons could be, but I'm not going to dive into it until we get there. But it's definitely not Ambrose. There's no way it's Ambrose.
I love that the drunk slurs his speech on shathered and then focuses to say shattered. That's just a nice little thing. When I listen to it again on the audio, I'm like, God, dude, it's great. That's one of the first moments where it's really great. But yeah, the Audible I can't recommend enough, because and then every time you hear Sealdish, especially Kilvin, it's great.
Then obviously Kvothe pretends to get injured and goes upstairs and tells Bast to, fucking take that kid out, drug him, knock him out, give him some fucking, basically roofie him, so he doesn't remember what the fuck's going on, doesn't remember me.
Oh, I wanted to mention real quick, when he fakes his injury, dude, he writes it so well, and it's a small thing, but it's a great moment, because he fools the reader as well. Like, because the way he writes it, in spite of his grin, it was obvious he'd hurt himself. His face was tight with pain. He leaned heavily on a chair for support. So we're reading what's happening in the moment, and that's what we see. And to us as readers, it's like, oh, he actually hurt himself. Until we keep reading, and when he tells Bast he was acting, we find out at the same time.
Yeah, he basically straightens up while he's walking up the steps with Bast. And
well, he
all
just
of a
says
sudden is just fine.
Well, he just says it's a good thing you're as gullible as they are, or something like that. But
yeah, he did the Seinfeld. It's like,
oh yeah.
What's wrong? Acting.
Oh, I thought that was Family Guy.
No, that's it's Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld pretending that he hurt his leg, and Elaine's what's wrong? He's like, acting. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for me to. I get you're probably right. Like, I mean, I've read the book so many times that now, I just know he's fucking with people. So it's hard for me to distance myself. Like, I've just read it too many times. But yeah, it's probably like that.
If you do read through it and sort of take yourself out of it and just look at what we've known up to that point, there's no, because of the way he writes, in spite of his grin, it was obvious he'd hurt himself. That line itself tells the reader he's hurt. Until I love that because we are in the room reading what's happening in the room, but in this sense we're even more so. I love shit like that. It's great because then the wall comes off, the fourth wall breaks when we hear Kvothe say, it's a good thing you're as gullible as they are. I just love that little thing.
Yeah, and I mean, because obviously, first time you're going through, you don't know that the guy is, dead on, that it is Kvothe. Like, you don't know that at that point until he tells Bast, like, he thinks he knows me. That's the point, when he gets upstairs with Bast is when the point you realize that the fucking dude is right.
Yeah, it gets dead serious at that point.
Yeah.
Kvothe tells him, listen to him
changes
3 times. And
Yeah.
You also, from that, listen 3 times, Bast. That's from his Plum Bob experience with Sim. That's where that came from. Because that's where, when Ambrose drugs him, and with the Plum Bob, and he loses all ability to, like, control his emotions and to control, like, he doesn't have that moral compass to know what he should do and what he shouldn't do. He doesn't have the ability to, know if something's right or wrong. It's just like it's this animal instinct with no morality. And when he goes to Sim tells him, like, look, this is going to get tiresome if I got to keep telling you, 3 times, I got to tell you 3 times every time not to do something. And then he starts going, like, I'm telling you 3 times, don't do this. And then
so is it like
that's
is
all
it
the
a
way in the
saying
first book, and you're not going to get that until the second book.
So I kind of took it like as it was a saying in this book, as it was said a few times, or maybe we should, as readers, listeners, listen to it 3 times what he's getting ready to say. But I kind of took it as like it was just a saying.
No, it's definitely not. It's not a saying. It's it originates from Sim getting frustrated with Kvothe not listening to him, and then fucking saying it, and that's where Kvothe is coming to Bast, like, listen to me 3 times. Like, that's where it originates. It's not like an idiom in the world or anything like that. That's straight from Kvothe's Bast.
Not until now. Kvothe now coined it, I think.
Yeah.
Now everybody's going to start saying it.
Yeah. I was going to say it's kind of like an inside baseball thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool little subtle thing that he does. Like Dan said, this is chapter 3, and we don't get it again until the second book. So it's again those subtleties.
So what makes the reread so good is, like, there's so many little Easter eggs like that. There's so many things in there where like, that's not important. It's not like that means anything to the overall scope of the story to listen 3 times, but it's just like it's a nice little Easter egg for anybody who's paying attention. And just, if you go back and reread the books, you get rewarded even just on little things like that.
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah, it's super cool.
And then, like, after that, then it goes into, he kind of reverts back to Kvothe, moves a little slower. Again. The small spark that the night's activity had lit, it seemed to be dimmer now. And then he's also kind of like, maybe he wasn't even there to begin with. Maybe I was just kind of imagining it. But he whatever, like, the atmosphere and the energy provided to him just vanished once the weight of Kvothe dropped back on him. It just vanished, and he just went back into that innkeeper mode.
Is there any significance to how he tells Bast to tell his story from here on out for the rest of the night?
No, he's just telling him, here's the bullshit fucking story that I just made up with. That has to be my history now. So remember what my bullshit history is. So keep our lies straight was just basically what it was.
Dan, you played
what he was
You played Skyrim, right?
Yeah.
Did you notice the arrow in the knee thing? Apparently that's a big like Skyrim thing. Like any it's like some thing like all these different, what do you call characters that aren't main characters but they're in the
NPCs.
story? Yeah, a lot of them were like, yeah, I used to be a warrior back in the day and I took an arrow in the knee. Apparently that's like it's like a thing that goes throughout the game. It's funny because I was talking to Flynn about it. And I took a picture of it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, the Skyrim arrow in the knee." So I guess
I don't know.
Yeah,
that
leave
play
it to
game.
leave
I
it to
know the
Rim Job
reference.
Tim to bring up Skyrim.
Nice.
Rim Job Timmy.
Yeah, look at you bringing it back. I did. So, as you mentioned, again, what I like so much about this in the first chapter is that ebb and flow, and we're back to that ebb again, and he's in the room by himself. And every time he's left alone by himself, it's all the heavy weight of the world is back on him. I did wonder, though, when he talks about the scars, he talked about all the scars were smooth and silver. And then he goes on and on and on. And then he says again, all the scars were smooth and silver except one. I was wondering what he's really talking about there. I don't know if he's talking about
all the
legitimate
silver
stuff.
scars are from the university whippings,
Mm-hmm.
and the other scars from
Tarbean.
the Adem tree.
Oh,
Remember, like, because he goes to the tree and he's looking at all the different items that they got around the tree, and he's thinking about what am I going to bring back to gain my admittance? What are if I bring the sword, are they going to think like that I'm a barbarian because I want to kill people, or are they going to think that I want to be a warrior for them? And he's looking at all these things, and he realizes each one of them has a different meaning. Then he ends up deciding to just go back without any of the gifts, and he stills the wind. He calls the name of the wind, stills the wind, but when he gets to the end, lets a leaf fall and run across his hand and wrist and cut him, and he lets it cut him, and he holds that out to her, and like the gift was like, I'm willing to bleed for the Adem. I'm willing to bleed for you guys. And so that's the scar that you're talking about.
why wouldn't that scar heal in the same way as the others?
Say that again.
Well,
The scar's a different color.
Yeah, why would it be a different color than the other scars? Is it fresh? Is it fresher?
I don't. I mean, the
not
weird
get
one
stitched.
is why are the university scars silver? And I assume it's to do with their healing, the medica, the magic, whatever
use.
they're
Okay.
fucking doing to heal wounds. Like, because those are the ones that should be like, why would you have silver scars and not regular scars? Like, he's got one regular scar and a bunch of silver scars. The weird ones are the silver scars, not the regular scar.
Aren't your scars a little silver? Do you have scars?
No, I don't have any. I have scars. I don't have silver scars.
All my scars are silver.
Yeah.
But I'm colorblind, so.
Wow. I'm going to
Okay.
go out on a limb and say they are definitely not silver.
They shine. They've like a smooth sheen to them.
Then the only other aspect of that, as after he goes to bed, and like the next day they're all leaving town, like the guy that recognized him was so hungover that he could barely function, so they basically kind of wiped that dude out. But then Kvothe goes to the smith, and he gets the iron cudgel, and he gets the apron to kind of protect himself. He comes up with a bullshit reason. I'm getting the iron cudgel because I'm scared of the Scrael, and I'm worried about demons, and then gets the apron because I'm going to pull, plants up with thorns on them or something like that. But his real reasoning behind doing it, which we'll learn in the next chapter, was to be able to fight the Scrael. But he goes there and he gets those things from that guy in this chapter.
Yeah, in the smithy says that he saved some back because everybody else came, so he figured Kote would come.
Yeah. The other guys that saw the Scrael had already gone to the smith and got their iron, so he was saving some side waiting for Kvothe to get it. And Kvothe's obviously, he's not going there because he's paranoid about demons. He's going there to go to war with these, not necessarily demons, but demon-esque fae creatures or whatever the fuck they are, whatever the Scrael are. He's getting that iron to go to war with them. And then he ends up, when he goes back, he ends up closing the inn early, which is something he had never done before. Ready to go to war with the Scrael.
All right, then. So chapter 4 is titled Halfway to Nuar, where Chronicler stumbles upon Kvothe, who has gone to an abandoned house to fight the Scrael. Chronicler is attacked by one and knocked unconscious. Kvothe manages to kill 5 of the Scrael on his own, and Chronicler briefly regains consciousness but passes back out, and then before he's able to help Kvothe bury and burn them all.
This is kind of an interesting chapter because, we get Chronicler is coming onto Kvothe in the woods, and he's resistant to the idea that there's basically boogeymen in the night, that there's demons. But he also has enough sense to when he senses the urgency on Kvothe's voice when Kvothe's like, dude, don't go back out into the dark. You're going to die. Come into the light. And he has enough sense to trust him. He senses the urgency, senses the danger, even if he doesn't necessarily believe that it's demons. But he has enough sense to kind of fucking come into the light and which obviously saves his life.
Well, yeah, Kvothe's even like, man, I don't even know how to explain it to you type of people, but let's just say they're demons. Because like I don't really know what to say, because I mean we could be here all day. It's just fucking come over here. You're gonna get killed if you don't.
Yeah, because he's like, if I tell you, because in his head he's like, if I just tell this dude it's demons, then he's gonna think I'm a fucking idiot and he's not gonna listen to me. But he's like, if he does believe me, then he's gonna fucking panic and fucking shit himself, and he's gonna be next to useless.
And he is, and he ends up being next to useless.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple little small subtle things here where Kvothe a couple times in exasperation, charred body of God, what are you doing out here at this time of night? And Telu anyway. Have you had bad luck your whole life? So these little sayings, just like we would say, like God damn it, or Jesus Christ, dude. Like just they feel like that the way they're put in there. And I still remember the first time reading. I'm like charred body of God. So they had some type of religious figure that was burned. I don't know. This is just what jumps out at me. And then it's like Telu. So Telu's somebody. Telu's God or something like that. It's just those little pepperings, and you go past it, but you don't dwell on it, but it's there,
Yeah.
Those little cultural like proverbs or whatever.
It fleshes out the world, and like to have all these idioms, and then you learn. He gives you the idiom first, and then you learn where the idiom came from later.
It's great. I mean, that's such a great way to do it, because I was gonna say to do it the opposite direction is not nearly as clever, because he hasn't put it in your mind yet. To feed you first and then see, it's like, oh well, that's where that came from. It's like, yeah, it's it's still cleverly done.
Like he's putting so much on the audience where it's like he's just saying like, look, if you really want to get the most out of my writing, you're going to have to read it a second time, because there's no fucking way you're going to read this charred body of God and this and that and all these idioms, and then you discover where the idioms came from 15 chapters later. You're not going to remember the first time it came up. It's just like subtly is put in your mind, so it's there, but you're not going to be thinking back to this chapter, and when you get to like chapter 23 or whatever, when Trappist tells the story of Telu and Menda. So like he puts all this stuff in there where he rewards people who go back through his book.
Well, it's partially that. Another way that I look at it is it's also respecting the reader. It's kind of like when, even with filmmakers, when they respect the audience to the effect that you're not showing them everything, when it's more subtly done. And he's doing it in an extraordinarily subtle way.
Yeah, he doesn't spoon feed you. He doesn't he doesn't go like, because he could easily go like, I said charred body of God, which is an idiom, which means da 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 da, and he could explain it, but he doesn't. He doesn't explain it at all. At no point in the book does he explain it. The only reason we know is because, you put two and two together, because, we're not idiots, and anybody who's reading it can fucking figure that shit out. And he does that with minor things, and he does it with things that are more complicated, and he has subtle hints on things that are very complicated, which we'll get into, in further episodes. We'll get into some of the very subtle, very complicated clues that he leaves into the books, which represents bigger things. Like he layers his books with so many clues, so many subtle hints, so many world building events, and so many idioms, things like that. He's just, man, he does a really good job of trusting his audience to be able to figure shit out on their own.
Yeah, it's great. It's what to me puts that to me is what puts it on another level, because of all those traits. And yeah, it's reward reading many times over. You get so much more out of it, which in my experience is quite rare.
Yeah, and I, just so you know, I miss out on a ton of that, but you mentioned its subtleties. It just it lays on you thick when you don't know what he's talking about, really. But it's very evident.
Yeah. Once you're going back through it that second time, then you start like, you're just like, almost every chapter, you're like, oh shit, he wrote that, and that, that is explained later on, and when you get to this chapter, and you just like the things that are more obvious, you start picking up on those, and then, as you start picking up on more and more hints, then all of a sudden you just start putting the bigger pieces together. Like he created a puzzle that you can just go and read through both books, and it's extremely enjoyable, or you can realize that the puzzle is way bigger. Like you can keep going. You could build way more than just reading it once.
It's pretty rare for me to be able to recommend a book to somebody and say, well, you need to read it more than once. Like that's,
yeah.
I haven't personally done that before. I just basically would recommend a book, but to be able to recommend something that should be read multiple times because it repays on those multiple rereads in such a great way. It's great. Obviously, that's an understatement.
It's actually a great it's actually a great business plan for Rothfuss to, like build this huge world puzzle and then wait 10 years so people can dig at it before the next one comes out.
Yeah.
Get everybody else involved, have people like us doing podcasts and digging into it deep and deeper and deeper, and who knows what we found out, what we don't know yet.
It's clever. It's got to be extremely hard to write a book like that, to be able to hide the clues in plain sight and that kind of stuff. It's got to be very difficult to write that way.
Yeah, there's got to be a lot of I imagine the map of the book itself. It has got to be. I can't imagine how many rewrites, how many revisions, how many rewrites, how many times he's gone back and peppered things in.
Yeah, he's probably got a wall behind him like that guy from A Beautiful Mind, right?
According to him, it's almost all in his head. Like he takes some notes, but I remember Tim talking about like Tim kept telling me like he probably's got a huge board and all this kind of stuff, and then like I sent him a quote where Rothfuss like, nah, it's just all in my head, man. He's like, I take some notes.
I don't believe it.
I take some notes, but most of it is just all in my head.
Yeah, and then he's like, and it really didn't take that long. I just let you guys play.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah,
the whole
it wasn't
time.
really that hard either. It wasn't really that difficult.
Very easy. Wrote it in 3 months, but I just kept you hanging. Just kept you hanging for years.
That's another Seinfeld reference, George.
Yeah.
The Guggenheim.
The only other aspect I had out of it was when Chronicler wakes up and Kvothe's like, hey, can you help me bury these things? He's like, I already got the wood or whatever. I already got the rowan wood. And Chronicler is like, Chronicler gave a laugh that sounded slightly hysterical, just like the children's song. Let me tell you what to do. Dig a pit 10 by 2, ash and elm and rowan too. Yes, indeed, the bundle man said dryly. You'd be surprised at the sort of things hidden away in children's songs. And then Chronicler passes out. But you really get a sense of how much shit is hidden into children's songs as you go along. But like just like what we talked about earlier with the kids singing their little nursery rhyme about the Chandrian, dead on. This one, dead on. We'll get into some stuff here and in a couple episodes that is like nursery rhyme type stuff that's got a lot of meat to it. A lot of these nursery rhymes got a lot of meat to it.
Well,
Can you just give us the overview? You got the Chandrian. You got how to bury demons. What else do we have to look forward to?
I was going to mention when I talked about just the previous chapter, I was saying, the Chandrian gives instruction. That song gives instruction and tells a story that has legitimacy, but we don't actually know that in the first read through until this line with, how to bury, with the rowan too and all that stuff. That lends reason to think there is legitimacy to the children's song we just heard, because this one has truth. An application,
Yeah, for sure.
But so I was kind of jumping ahead with well, I mean, if you're looking at over the overarching, then we know the story or the children's song about the Chandrian is 100% accurate. But I was just kind of putting myself in the shoes of a first reader.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff. We come across that seem like little throwaway poetry lines that we'll be able to dig into deeply. That's one thing you discover when you go back in a reread and you kind of you try to piece things together. You realize like he does not have a lot of throwaway sentences. He does not have a lot of empty talk. Like everything seems to be important. There's very little that is not important, that doesn't have something to do with something we're trying to figure out. It's brilliant.
He does a lot of those interconnected sort of things, like so we were talking about like idioms and a proverb that I sort of found within the chapter that we hear quite a bit. He asked Chronicler, you're awake? Okay, good. Can you talk? Yes. And then he's like, now third time pays for all. Do you think you can stand up and help me? That third time pays for all. We hear that quite a bit throughout the book.
Yeah.
And he does, and I was going to mention, he does that too with Tinkers. There's always 3. There's these groups of 3 in offerings, and then there's 7. And like he does these interconnectedness of groupings like that too. Which, I mean, again, we're talking about world building. That's these traits within the world they're great. I mean, it just makes it so much more tangible that we're living inside this world. It's freaking great.
Yeah, it definitely makes the rereads more interesting when you realize like every single sentence you could pick apart and you can analyze, and like when he has you on that level, like it gets you gets you thinking very deeply on everything you read. You're trying to figure out, like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but what are you really saying?
Well, yeah, and then Fitz was talking about that earlier when you kind of read through it and you're like, yeah, it feels like there's something else here, but you just keep moving. That's what's so great about the rereads is you felt it the first time, but now you know to what dig into a little bit more. And there's something
Yeah.
about when you read through again, because you do know the overarching nature of what is coming, but now you get to delve in a little bit further and make those connections. And it's really satisfying because he makes it worthwhile, he makes it interesting, and he peppers it throughout. I mean, it's masterful.
I'll say it's somewhat satisfying. There's a whole big piece now that I've been through the story. I'm ready to plow through book 3 too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, is definitely you want the answers. You get some of them. And I got a lot of them. We'll go through, we'll figure out a lot of the answers, but there's still a ton of answers that we need resolved in book 3. But I think that short chapters, not a lot to say on chapter 4, and then chapter 5 is also pretty short. But I think that's pretty much everything I would have to say on chapter 4.
Yeah, me too.
Tim?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so chapter 5 is titled Notes. In this chapter, Kvothe returns to the bar with Chronicler over his shoulder. Bast is up, worried, pissed off because he left without telling him what he was about to do. Leaves him a shitty note. They end up putting Chronicler to bed and tend to Kvothe's wounds. And Bast sings a lullaby to Kvothe to comfort him.
It's a funny chapter, man.
Yeah.
It's like, as far as he doesn't tell Bast what he's trying to do, and obviously we know Kvothe doesn't have, it doesn't seem like he has access to his sympathy. He doesn't have access to his ADM fighting skills. It doesn't seem like he has access to his powers. And so he's just relying on just basically brute strength and athleticism. It says that he says to Bast in the second book, he's like, I chose that spot and time specifically. So there might be something to that it's maybe that the bar, inside the bar, is holding him back, and maybe when he was outside the bar at night, like, maybe that he had more access to his power, but it doesn't seem like he uses, we don't know what he used, because fucking Chronicler, we're in Chronicler's head, and Chronicler fucking gets knocked out right away, so we don't see Kvothe fight. But he does mention, like, I chose that time and spot specifically, so there might be something to that.
What could he possibly mean, Dan? Because it seems like the Skrael been attacking people in the town. He happened to have a chance to get that bone or that leg or whatever to attract him, right? Isn't that why he did it?
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is, like, the fact that he's, like, tells Bast later on, I think it's in book 2. Yeah, it's definitely in book 2. It's after he gets his ass kicked by those 2 guards, and Bast is like, how the fuck could you let those 2 guards beat you up? And then Bast is like, you just beat 5 Skrael the other day, and he's like, I chose that time and spot specifically.
Oh, can I chime in about that, Dan? Could it be a full moon or something? Because isn't when the full moon in the Fae what Florian says?
I don't remember any mention of a moon in this chapter.
No, not in this chapter. I'm just saying Florian says that, there's something to when the Fae is open, or when you can get back and forth through the moon. So maybe that's what he means. Like, I don't know what he could have drawn from the Fae, but
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying, like, there's no mention of the moon, so that doesn't mean that it can't be the moon. It's just there's no mention of the moon in this chapter, so I don't know that he chose this time because of the moon. Could be, but I don't remember any mention of the moon in this chapter, so I don't know. But
what do you think it could be, though?
Well, I don't know. It could have just been that it was just like an offhand comment, or it could be that if he's outside of the bar, maybe just outside of the bar at night or whatever, like then he has access to his abilities. Whereas if he's in that bar, he doesn't have access to his abilities. It could be that. It could have just been a throwaway line. It's tough to say. We don't have enough information. But it's weird that he said that. It's weird that he said that.
Well, like as far as Kvothe telling the story and where he's at power-wise at the end, he should not have been able to kill those Skrells. So it had to have something to do with it. There's, you know what I mean? I agree with you that it definitely had to have something to do with timing, or I don't know, maybe preparation. But how did Kote, transition to Kvothe? I don't know.
I don't know how easy it is to kill a Skrell either. We haven't seen one killed in front of us. Maybe just whacking it over the head with an iron bar is able to kill him. I mean, it's not like he came away unscathed. He got fucked up. He ended up getting like 50 stitches or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he got fucked up. So it doesn't mean that he did have access to his powers. I bring it up only because it raises questions, and it's not a clear explanation that maybe he just chose that spot because it was far enough away from the town and he was able to put his back up against the wall. Maybe that's why he chose the spot. Maybe he chose that spot because if he leaves the bar, he has access to his powers again. That could be a reason. We just don't know the answer.
Yeah, and either way, what we do know is the Skrell are formidable foes, and Kote had to turn into Kvothe. He had to become something that we haven't seen so far in order to just all of a sudden up and kill these things like no problem. We do figure out how.
Well, he didn't kill him with no problem. He had a major fucking problem. He got fucked up, but he did kill him.
I didn't mean no problem.
It's interesting though.
You kill five of them.
When Chronicler comes up on him, it does seem like Kvothe is different. He's a lot more assertive. He seems like he's there for a purpose. He knows what he's getting himself into, and he seems ready. You know what I mean? I kind of wonder when you talk about the bar. Maybe the bar has some power over him. I wonder if there's something like a gram contained, but something different where it's hiding him, which saps away his powers or something. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but I could see something like that in terms of why that line of what he mentioned, what he's suggesting to Bast, obviously, by saying that is he chose the circumstances. He chose where he was going to be. He chose the time. So he knew what they were fighting. He was fighting on his own terms, it seems. But I mean, it is his bar, right? It's not like he's not familiar with those, that terrain. He's obviously familiar with it. It's his bar. So it's interesting that you're pitting those two things against one another in that explanatory circumstance.
So if I could just throw another maybe red herring out there, could it have something to do with the house that the burned out house that he chooses to fight them in?
I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's much circumstance. There's not much suggested to give us reason to suspect much about it. Personally,
they don't say anything about the house other than it's just like a burned out, an abandoned, crumbled house, which just a couple of open walls, obviously to the sky, so it just seems like a dilapidated house, but it doesn't say anything that would give us clues that there's importance to the house.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, he could write it that way, but the fact that he didn't, after the fact, he could go and backtrack and lend importance to it, in book 3, but he doesn't lend any importance to it in this chapter, obviously.
I didn't think about it till you guys just started talking about it. What I did think about was he was in that, in that house, he could put his back up against a chimney wall, and that half of him would be covered, so he could fight the Skrells. Just being smart about
practical
how he could fight.
Yeah, and it's far enough away from the town where they're not going to just go running off and go attack someone else. So
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, that's the other part of it. It's his duty, just like with the Dracus. I mean, these are his fault. That's what it seems, and this is his duty. He's trying to protect other people in the town by at least eliminating some of them. He's not just going out there because he's a Billy badass, or he's not like a thrill seeker, right? I mean, he's doing this because he's trying to protect others by at least minimizing the blow or minimizing what damage could be done.
And he even protects Bast at the same time, when Bast could have been a huge help to him, I think. But he chooses not to involve him.
Yeah, it sounds like if it was him and Bast, they would have had much better chance to come away much less scathed than Kvothe comes back.
But the problem Bast would have had is, like, it seems like your best bet is iron.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Bast has got a problem with iron.
He's allergic, right? He's got an allergy.
Yeah. He's
Something like that.
He's got an allergy to iron.
He gets the sniffles. His eyes start itching. It's a rash.
Which is hell, I can say.
Gotta be, what kind of blood did the Fae got? Like, they don't have iron in their blood?
No.
Yeah.
Felurian doesn't. She can't even pick up a little piece of iron. A button, if you will. If you'll allow it.
If you'll allow it.
I will not allow it.
I wish people would say that instead of banned. If you will.
But
it's a clip. She can't even. She has the hardest time putting on an iron clip. That's
didn't she? She uses iron to help make the cloak for Kvothe.
That's right? What I'm talking about.
That was the hardest part.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the part on the cloak that binds it together.
Speaking of Felurian, there's some really cool stuff contained within the chapter that sort of separates the Fae from. And it's subtle, but they sort of separate Bast from Kvothe when he's going to stitch him up, and he's like, I'm not going to use your tools. I'm going to use mine. Good bone. But and there's a little proverb or idiom, if you would allow, phrase in there where instead of charred body of God or Telu anyway, he says stream and stone. It's frightening how primitive you people are. Yeah. So that was really interesting to me. So let's just entertain the idea, if you will allow. So if instead of like a charred body of God or a Telu, instead of those figures, stream and stone. So to me, that would give a suggestion that the Fae
kidney stones.
To me, and stream is just like the pizzle that comes out through the
kidney stones.
It's
clearly kidney stones. It's a stream with stones. It's kidney stones.
To me, what that sort of suggested is that the Fae are like big on, like they're close to nature. Like nature is ancient. Nature is their god. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I love that subtle little difference because we still don't really know the difference with Bast yet. I mean, there's the iron. There's it's been very subtle thus far, but this is a subtle thing you could just go beyond. But again, this is why the further read-throughs are so enriching. Is I just like that. I like that idea that he comes from a different culture where they speak is different and what they value is different. And this suggestion of what he's saying here in this little idiom or proverb. I guess it's not a proverb. It's more of an idiom. Whatever.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. And I'll allow it.
It's a saying.
But it does keep coming back to these. It does keep coming back to these in the book. Continually comes back to these earthly, kind of like rock and iron, like things that are natural but have power. Natural powers is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I dig it.
And then he's got his little sad sack poem that he reads as Kvothe is laying in bed. It's very seems very out of character for Bast.
It's this chapter. So it starts with he's like a mad. It plays up some stereotypes where he's so pissed that I mean, what is it? It's almost like a lover. It almost seemed like they're like,
Can you
this
read it?
relationship.
Seems like a lullaby. It says, how odd to watch a mortal kindle, then to dwindle day by day, knowing their bright souls are tender, and the wind will have its way. Would I could my own fire lend, what does your flickering portend? Bat's voice faded until at last he sat motionless, watching the rise and fall of his master's silent breathing through the long hours of morning's early dark.
So it seems like they paint him in a godly picture. Like
it seems like he's watching someone he loves dying is what the poem seems like. Would I could my own fire lend, what does your flickering portend? That sounds like someone is dying and you wish you could fucking give some of your life force to them to keep them going.
So I thought it meant like that Bast was withholding, that he could potentially lend help to Kvothe, but he has to. And maybe I'm reading that wrong, but it seemed like to me until the very end of the poem when Bast says that he's going to. You have to read the last line again, but at the last line he contradicts himself, I thought.
No, he doesn't contradict himself. He's saying, "Would I could my own fire lend? What does your flickering portend?" He's saying, "I wish I could give you my own fire to keep you going. What is your flickering portend? Are you going to die on me?" Is what he's saying.
Yeah, I kind of thought it meant that I've been corrected. I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so he's just watching his basically his friend, his mentor, his master dying, and he's wishing he could do something about it. But it's very out of character for Bast. From what we see, we don't get this this poetic Bast in the rest of the book. We get Bast seems to be a very aloof, and he obviously cares about Kvothe a lot, but he seems to have a lot of aloofness and also a lot of fire in his belly. We don't get that that poet, that artist side that we get here. This is like the only side of that we get of him.
This definitely further makes me very, very curious about their backstory, how they met, what went down, that they're together, and that how their relationship is. It's interesting because he's obvious. It feels like Kvothe like saved his freaking life or something.
Yeah, why is he so loyal? Yeah. Why does he care so much?
In a short span, too, if I can just add. It seems like we're by the end of the second book.
It's been a couple years, like but still, even just a couple years, like, why does he care so much?
And it's especially because we're left in the dark, because we don't know anything else about it. Nothing. It's such an interesting thing to do because he's so important in his world now, but he's not in the story outside of the present world.
No. And he's so gangster in other moments too.
Yeah, but again, it's such an interesting thing to leave the readers in the dark on, because then it's just you speculate and you have to wonder. But you're left in the dark in so many ways with him. But it's also because he's of the Fae. I can't figure it out. It's very enigmatic.
Like
for
sure. Just like how quick he is with Chronicler, like, dude, I will eat your heart. I will fucking murder you and murder everyone you ever known. Like, he's gangster. But and he says it so very matter of fact. He is super fucking loyal. Like, even those guys he hires to go beat up Kvothe, he goes and fucking murders them at the end.
Yeah, for coming at him. I'll tell you, I when originally, and this may mean nothing, just as an aside, when Florian does make that shade, I initially thought that was Bast. I don't know why. accepted he was a protection. Yeah, his cloak, his super cloak, if you'll allow it.
No,
he's just a protection. That's all.
I'm not going to allow it, only because you keep saying it. So I will not allow it.
Never mind then. Thank you. I needed to be corrected a few times in this episode, so.
Well, we know Bast is like 150 years old. Like, I think we're gonna obviously in the third book we'll find out how he meets Bast, because Bast at some point meets Denna. So, like, Bast clearly meets Kvothe before all shit breaks loose.
Yeah.
So we will get our answers, but there's just nothing to go on in these first two books to really figure out Bast and understand him very well.
Yeah, he's an enigma. There was one thing that we did that I wanted to mention, because I just mentioned bloodless. It's also in the chapter, this chapter as well, where I thought you weren't supposed to bleed, Reshi. Bast said bloodless and all that. And don't believe everything you hear in stories, Bast. They lie to you. So you get, again, we just heard, Kvothe the bloodless. I think that's how the drunk kid said it. And then, again, you get that whole blood. So the foreshadow is really great. He layers it throughout. And these are one of those circumstances where we get rewarded and we figure out what it is, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't always happen.
No, we get a lot, but he's just got so many. He's got so many names, so many hints, and so many clues and everything. Where like you get an answer to 50, but then you still got like another 150 you didn't get answers to.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of work to do in the third book.
Yeah, we'll see if he gets there. It's taken him 10 years. He may never get there. There's too many questions.
No, he's never going to write it.
He's way too. Nope.
He's never going to write it.
You guys probably should stop listening to the podcast and just quit
over.
giving a shit about this. This is the end. This is all you're left with.
It's still worth it.
This is
the world is dark and it's a bleak place. It's a dark, dark world, and you're never going to get what you want. And no, it's very depressing.
DMX said it best.
It's true to life,
right? It's dark and hell is hot.
Oh,
What's his name? Camus. Is that how you say his
Albert
name?
Camus.
Camus. Imagine Sisyphus happy. Just gotta imagine when you're pushing that rock up that hill. You just gotta imagine that just the act of pushing the rock up the hill is what makes you happy.
What are you talking about?
The grind. You know the story of Sisyphus?
You're ringing bells, but tell me the story.
Sisyphus was
Sisyphus.
It's a Greek god. Sisyphus. It's a Greek god story where he was cursed to have to push a rock up a hill. And every time he got it to the top of the hill, the rock would roll all the way back down. And so Camus, a French philosopher, and his thing was saying that you have to imagine Sisyphus happy. That the grind, the pushing it up the hill, the battle, it's not that it was pointless and that you were just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, just doing it. Just the act of every day pushing it up the hill, that made you happy. Just the grind made you happy.
Or it's the, I don't know what the reference is as far as anything else other than, shit sucks. You better get used to it. It's like
that's a terrible,
old man
philosophy. No, the philosophy
but that's
is
what you're saying.
The philosophy is the grind is happiness.
Enjoy the grind.
The
grind
journey.
Is the happiness.
It's not the.
You better get used to it and
it's
enjoy
not the
it.
happy ending. It's the story. The story of the continuing story is happiness. Not that fucking shit sucks, so just deal with it. That's the opposite.
I'm just saying, shit's gonna suck no matter what. I take the old man in the sea approach.
He's doubling down.
Yeah.
I am doubling down. I'm saying take the old man in the sea approach where it is going to suck. You're right. So do whatever you can do to be happy. Otherwise, it's still going to suck. So you might as well be happy. Or you might as well deal with it.
I'm opting out on that viewpoint. That is not where I'm going to lead
my
my life.
I'm going
not
with
saying that's how I live my
the
life,
grind
but-
is the journey is happiness. Enjoy the journey. Forget about the end point.
Why you got to push a 1,000-pound boulder up a hill for the rest of your life?
Hell yeah,
Right.
man. That's
Okay.
fucking life, man. It's fucking
Sounds
awesome.
great. Sounds awesome.
Gonna fucking build up. I'm gonna build up fucking some muscles in my back. My arms are gonna get jacked. Fucking shoulders are gonna be rocking. Dude, I'm gonna be
Yeah, but you
so
can't-
in shape, pushing this fucking boulder up every day. I'm gonna be fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime.
Do you at least get plateaus where you can enjoy the work, like enjoy the fruits of your labor? Take a rest.
When that fucking rock goes rolling back down that hill and I gotta go back down and get it, I got a huge break. Fucking going downhill, getting it, man. Life is sweet. Fucking getting a great workout all the way up, fucking getting strong as shit, and then I get, when it rolls back down, fucking get a break, get a run back down, nice and easy, jog down the hill. Man, this is a sweet ass life. Looking at it all wrong.
Sounds like the only joy is when it rolls back down.
It's all joy. It's all joy.
Hey, listen, let's give it a break, huh?
All right.
What's coming up, Dan? What's coming up?
We'll probably get through like chapters like 6 through 10. So we're going to get the real introduction of Chronicler and Kvothe talking for the first time. Chronicler is going to try to talk Kvothe into telling his story. And then Kvothe is going to start telling his story. So we'll get introduced to Kvothe's parents, his troop, and we'll get introduced to Avanthy and probably get our little first introduction of sympathy. I think we'll probably get into all of that kind of stuff next week.
Tim, we're gonna sign off if you'll allow it.
Oh, jeez.
Did you have anything else?
Technically, Camus from Algeria, but he is French.
Oh, shut up,
I
dude.
just thought.
Why are you like that? Why are you that kind of person?
I was hoping that would be the reaction that it would elicit, because I knew it was just a prickish thing to point out.
Actually,
but I like Camus. I like Camus.
Actually. All right, yeah. Well, I think that pretty much covers it, folks.
All right.
Yeah.
Good night, guys. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace out.